to the Vagabond Way podcast. The journey goes ever on with the long road. This episode, How to Survive and Thrive. The launch of the Long Road's new single, If There's a God Out Here, is the focus for today's show. Here's Steve Bonham, Kev Moore and Chris the Bish Lydon, that's me. We're chatting about where the song comes from, its meaning and the direction it pulls in. Kev also takes us on his next record store stop to BPM Records, and Steve talks to us about his Vagabond Mindset approach and his brand new book, How to Survive and Thrive in an Impossible World. The Vagabond Way podcast, featuring the long road, is exploring the world of the troubadour, the adventurer, the vagabond. The world isn't beige, it isn't processed, it's authentic, it's rich and it's real. If those are the sorts of sentiments that make your brain light up, then hop on board. We are embracing all of those things, we're celebrating all of that, and we'd love it if you joined us on the journey. Greetings, I am Chris the Bish Lydon. Somehow, it's the start of October. How the heckles did that happen? Today sees the launch of our second single from our upcoming Out of the Darkness EP. Today's new single is called If There's a God Out Here. And the first segment on today's show is a chat between Steve Bonham, Kev Moore and me, The Long Road, talking about the origins of the song, its roots in Appalachia and the story beneath the surface. We'll play the song a little bit later for you to hear. As we talk about in the upcoming chat, it's a bit different in many respects, but I hope you'll agree it still fits in that long road world. It seems like only yesterday that it was the start of September and we were launching our last single, On a Bridge Across the River, but here we are a month later all of a sudden, and it's part of our ongoing experiment for this new release cycle, smaller chunks of music but more regularly, trying to keep people drip fed with our stuff. Both of these songs are On a Bridge and If There's a God Out Here. They have a deep connection to the places they were born in those southern states of America. And we think they're both great examples of the world the long road is building or inhabiting these days. That transatlantic connection, songs deeply rooted in slices of American life, American culture, but examined through the lens of our English adventurer's approach. On a Bridge is obviously still out there, enjoying radio plays and YouTube views, so do check it out. Maybe even do a bit of a contrast and compare, if you like, with If There's a God Out Here. Anyway, so on with the show. I'm going to hand over to, yes, you've guessed it, I'm going to hand over to myself. Hello again, podcasters. So here we are. We've got the long road together again, online, digitally. We've got Steve Bonham.
Hello.
At home in Derbyshire. We've got Kev Moore at home in Spain.
Hi there.
And me, Chris the Bish Lydon. I'm at home in Manchester.
Always feels like you're about to launch a quiz show there.
Well,
just a minute.
And your start of a 10 is... Yeah. Maybe that's our next thing. We've got the podcast, we've got the YouTube show. Maybe we need some sort of quiz on late night local TV. I don't know. Anyway, so today we are thrilled that our next new single is out, and it's called If There's a God Out Here, and it's available now. You can listen to it on Spotify, on Apple Music. There's a video on YouTube. Just search out If There's a God Out Here, and you will find it. And now this, for me, this is a remarkable song in our output, I think, because it's dark. Boy, is it dark. And it starts off quite different to a lot of our other songs in terms of the sound world we're into. And I'm really excited for people to get to hear it because I think it's a bit different. But I think it's still got all those signature long road little features in there. Steve, maybe you tell us a little bit about where this song comes from, If There's a God Out Here.
Yeah, it's quite interesting. Very recently, a guy called Justin Townes Earl died. He's Steve Earle's son. The first time I came across him was on a very obscure documentary in which he's talking about Americana music, and he's going through Appalachia, and he's talking a lot about how desperate life is in that part of the world and how the law doesn't really run there, and how there was this massive drugs problem caused by the overprescription of morphine-based painkillers in the States, which so up in the woods, they're literally feral gangs going around robbing pharmacies to get their hands on this drug, and then because it's hard to get hold of, they've now moved into making crystal meth. So it's a really dark place. Cue forward about a year, and I'm walking through it.
As you do. Well, as you do, Steve. Yeah,
As you do. Yeah.
On a trek with a friend, and we're 8 days into the woods, and people have said, if you see people, best to avoid them. Don't ask for their names or anything like that. Actually, we didn't see very few people, but 2 or 3 in 8 days. I mean, we were 15 days on trail altogether, and we saw more black bears than we saw people. But then I rocked up in a place called Reliance, and Reliance has sort of fed its way into quite a few of the songs, and I was talking to the tiny little place in the middle of nowhere, and the guy who ran the shop and the store, Harold Webb, he and I were just sitting talking, and he was telling me, this problem was real, that people there, a lot of them were prescribed these drugs originally. They'd all worked in heavy industries. They worked in logging and they worked in mining, and life is incredibly hard. No real social security, no safety net there.
Yeah.
And many of them had very painful injuries, so they would just take painkillers to keep working.
Mm-hmm.
And they become addicts. So it's a huge thing. And up in the woods, that's where they do. And they call it hillbilly heroin. And it just struck me because if you walk, it is one of the most beautiful places I've ever trekked. I mean, it's stunningly lovely, yet there's this incredibly dark story behind it. If you do get to the road, you're driving on the road, the only buildings that are substantial are the Baptist churches, which are all very nicely painted and very white, and there's usually a smiling big roadside poster, a picture of the pastor, looking like a real estate agent.
Yeah.
And everything else is, so you think, well, what sort of, without getting religious, this is a funny way of God being around here, out here. And remember, these are churches which are very, very fundamental. I mean, they still do stuff with snakes, proving God loves you because you don't get bitten by a snake, and there's all that sort of stuff going on.
Wow.
So it just really hit me, this kind of, if there's God out here, he's going to be pretty angry with what's going on and upset with what's going on. And it's the Old Testament. Cut forward to in England, I just took that on board, and then because of Dave Pegg, I have this, because that's got to blame somebody, I have this guitar bouzouki, and
now, we've talked about this before, Steve, the addiction thing. It's fine.
Thought would be a good idea to have, and I was messing around, and then just started playing these very heavy, very simple chords. And this song just came out in one go, really. The whole thing was a few minutes, and it was almost like trying to get over the shock and the horror of that story. And then you guys came along and made it even darker.
Well, that's the thing. I remember when I first heard it. I remember sitting in your lounge and you played me for the first time. I thought, this is edgy. This has got some balls to it. But then in the studio, I'm afraid we turned up the dial there, I think.
We did.
Yeah.
Kev, you get a shining role in this one with the vocals in this one as well.
Oh yeah. I do that kind of devilish undercurrent thing going on, don't I?
Yeah.
This is the first time Kev very politely said to me, I think I should sing the verses, Steve. And I thought, yeah, that's probably true. And I think it works really well having those two voices as a result.
It's a great juxtaposition. I remember when you first played it to me, I think we even kind of attempted it live before we recorded it, didn't we?
We did.
We might have.
Yeah. God, did we?
Yeah, I think we did in Church Braun, yeah. And I remember thinking, my God, this song is like all over the place, it stops here, then it goes off in this direction, then it does it. It's got so much going on, but that it kind of needs that. It's because it is mirroring that chaos of that place that you described, and I think it's one of our most extreme tracks. But as you say, Chris, it all our ingredients are in there, but given half a chance, we'd probably chuck a bit more in than we should.
Well, I think we tamed ourselves quite nicely, and I think again Stuart is great at the mixing, the sort of Not the mixing technically. I mean, he's great at that. But I mean, what ingredients do we need to record on this song?
Well, he's our George Martin, isn't he? I think he understands our idiosyncrasies, really.
And he knows when to push us a little bit further than we might initially think to go. Yeah. But he also knows when to say, actually, we've got enough there, or I don't think we need that.
Which is what a good producer does, you know.
When people hear it, like I say, you can hear it on Spotify and Apple Music right now. This song I think it's the long road, but it is there's no varnish or veneer on this one at all. It is.
We're unfettered, aren't we, on this one?
I think one of the things that strikes me about the music we're making for this EP is actually that there are so many layers to the. You can listen to it, go, nice song. You can listen to someone go, oh, nice song, interesting words, and then you can listen to it, go, oh, nice song, interesting words. What's the story behind this? Where has this come from? Yeah. And I think hearing Steve talking about the place this song was born in, and the nature of the lives that people are living there, and hopefully we can sort of get that across in our messaging to the public about it. It's a song about a place and people that are living a different life to us. Yeah. But again, it's the power of what we can do as musicians is we can bring those stories to people who wouldn't normally see them.
And I think you have to go dark. You know, we don't go dark all the time, but you know, sometimes you have to reflect the truth. You know, we turn away from too much stuff in life. If you can see it, you shouldn't turn away. That's the line. Yeah. If you see it, you shouldn't turn away. I
think we've leaned into things on this EP, Out of the Darkness. The full EP will be out in a month. We've had On a Bridge Across the River was the first single out a month ago. We've got this one, If There's a God Out Here, out today. And we lead into this one in terms of darkness, in terms of grittiness, in terms of wanting to show real life in all its forms. I think for the next EP, Looking for Gold, I think probably we step back a little bit. Yeah. We take a slightly more, not rose-tinted view of things, but it's less dark. But it's. I mean
that's life, isn't it? Life has all those facets, and art reflects that. You know.
Out of the Darkness is coming out in autumn 2020. Maybe, and that's the darkest one for a dark year, I think. Maybe because when we launch Looking for Gold, it'll be early 2021. Maybe things will be looking up a bit sort of lightwise, and we can all feel like we are coming out of the darkness, and Looking for Gold is on the cards again. Don't forget, there's a video on YouTube created by our own Kev Moore, which just adds to the spook and disturbance level of this song. But as Steve says, we shouldn't shy away. These songs reflect real life out there. So here it is, If There's a God Out Here, the new single from Steve Bonham on the Long Road. Brace yourselves.
If there's a God out here, he's an angry one. There's a God out here, he pack a gun. There's a God out here, he's spitting curse. Leave poor sinners in the dirt. If there's a God out here, he's lost control, taking the weed from darkened souls. There's a God out here, he threw the fight, closed the door, turned off the light. backwoods. No more moonshine's understood, as crystals turn from blue to white. Satan's laughter with pure delight. If the God out here is an angry one, so God out here he'd pack a gun. So God out here he's spitting curves, leave poor sinners in the dirt. So God out here he's lost control, taking the weed for God's soul. God out here he threw the fight, closed the door, turned off the light.
I don't have a song for the mix this week because this week has been about the launch of my new book, How to Survive and Thrive in an Impossible World. It's a book about how to get by and, in fact, better than that, have a good life when you're surrounded by chaos, uncertainty and general mayhem. I mean, the book, which is my first time I've been able to combine my two lives as a musician and a writer and adventurer with my other work as a psychologist, is meant for everybody. It's for anyone who feels like, where do I go from here, or how do I cope? But funny enough, I think it's really suitable for musicians. So I offer a brief synopsis here of what you might do. You see, the thing about a life of a musician or a writer, and bizarrely also this particular psychologist, its constant feature is uncertainty. You'd never know how life is going to be 2 or 3 months out. And you get used to it and you adapt to it. And I think for most people, that's not actually how they live their lives. They live their lives with regular employment. And the idea of not having that employment had and has feelings of potential catastrophe and disaster. So this book is about thinking about how do you get your head in the right place for a more uncertain world. And it talks about 5 rules, five things that you can sort of orient yourself round to cope better. And these ideas these rules come partly, I guess, from me as a psychologist, but actually much, much more from a life on the road, from the trips and explorations I've done, from the people I've met and the extraordinary stories that they often give you. You see, the problem with the normal world is it's so goal-oriented, it's so goal-fixed. Every time you want to change something, the first thing you are told is, what's your goal? What's your vision? What would good look like? And for most of us, we're just completely dumbfounded with that idea. I have no idea. I can't imagine it. And the problem is, goals are very difficult. You're lucky if you have them. You're even more fortunate if the circumstances and the planets align in such a way that you might achieve them. Now, if you're going to cope with this world, you've got to have what I've called a vagabond mindset. You've got to be much more comfortable with the world coming to you than you endlessly chasing after it. And I think, every musician I've ever known knows that's the case, that most of the great things that happen seem to happen by accident or by good fortune. So what are these rules that might help you? I think the first rule is be wild. Be wild doesn't mean be angry or furious or savage. It means be like a wild animal in the way you pay attention to what's going on around you and you see what's really there. Take the time to slow down and take on board the possibility in yourself and a possibility in the world around you. There's more to us than meets the eye, and there's always more to the world than meets the eye. The second rule is be strong. Build your life around continuously exploring and releasing the capabilities you have. Be a better player. Be a better songwriter. Be a better cook. Build your strengths, because they aid psychologically to the source of your happiness. And B, they mean you're ready for whatever happens. You know, it's been interesting working during the lockdown and finally facing up to sorting out technologies like Amazon and Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, etc., etc., etc. And I don't love them, and I never will, but I feel I've at least negotiated a truce with them in terms of what I do. So be strong. We can always develop that which is hidden. I think the third rule is be experimental. Try things out. You know, the trouble with experts, everyone tells you, you should do this, you should do that, and actually most of the time, they don't actually know. The fact you are an expert in something doesn't actually make you that much better at giving advice quite often. It's a controversial point, but most experts extend themselves beyond their actual knowledge. So try things out. And anyway, in this completely mad, unpredictable world, it's going to be your best bet. There is no rule book, ironically, beyond seeing what works, trying what things out. Musically, music is a constant process of trying things out, trying new chords out, trying new words out, trying new sounds out, trying new recording out, trying new performance out. And the only way you know what's going to work is by trying it out. Fourth rule is travel with companions. I think the word companion means the people we break bread with, companion. And in our lives, if we've got half a dozen people who get us and understand us and support us, we are blessed, blessed people. And nurturing those relationships who can help us on our journey is one of the key parts of our psychological health. But also when we come to do something, and I have been so lucky working with Kev and Chris, I work with two people who can do all the things I can't do, and they can do it really, really well. And I hope there are things they feel, Steve does that. It's good to have him on board. And the last rule is take the first step. There's a lovely poem by David White in which the line goes, take the first step, not the second. Take the one you're most afraid of making. We can be bewildered, and as musicians we can feel that the whole world is lined up to make our lives impossible. But the only thing we can do is take the first step. Make it a small one, make it a long one, but take it, cross the threshold. It's really important. So there you have it. In a world in which rules don't work, I propose 5 rules, which I get the irony, but they are less strict guidelines and things like that than invitations. Invitations to be in a better place.
Steve is right. I think one of the reasons we work well together is the crossover of interests, or desires, or intentions, and musical ideas, but some sort of true diametric opposites of thinking or approach and skills. You know, there are things that I am terrible at that often Steve is very, very good at. And there are things that Steve is terrible at that I can often sort them out just fine. If you want to get a copy of Steve's new book, How to Survive and Thrive in an Impossible World, go to artisan-creative.com and you'll see the links to the bookstore there. Or just have a look at our social media. There's posts and links about it there. Now, normally Steve would have a new song to play us, or the start of one, but instead I'm going back into the archives a little bit, and I've picked out a song from near the start of this sort of era of musical development for Steve and me. When Steve did a trek across Hadrian's Wall, 6 or 7 years ago now, and we did gigs along the route each day. One of the songs that grew out of that track for Steve was this song, which is called Walking the Wall. We actually do have another song called Take the First Step, which would fit deliciously with Steve's fifth rule there. But I played that on a podcast earlier in the year, so I thought we'd play something a little bit different this time. So this song, Walking the Wall, it was recorded in Ireland, I think it must have been 6 years ago, 2014, and came out on Steve's Songsmith album. Features some great musicians, David Ducey on fiddle, Stephen Doherty on whistles, Jimmy Higgins on percussion, and Sammy Carter on backing vocals. And actually, although our record keeping from those days is less stringent than it is now, I think Kev must be playing bass on this one as well, in one of those first sessions that Kev joined us on in this modern era. Anyway, this song has a special place in my heart, and in Steve's I know as well. We love to play it at gigs still, and so here it is for you. It's called Walking the Wall.
Who am I asked myself. Who am I to mourn? The words unrhymed, the notes unsigned, from the pages torn. Vagabond of circumstance, still riding in the clouds. A lonely man, the horizon's edge, talks to himself out loud. All my life I've been walking the wall. I've been so afraid I was gonna fall, and I'm waiting for this sun to rise. I've been thinking that the shadow of my heart keeps calling, stepping out from this compromise. All my life, walking the wall. All my life, walking the wall. Look in the mirror, tell me, when did I speak so true? When through the arc of a summer's day I caught a glimpse of you. 100 perfect reasons to take the road again, but none of them make any sense when I think of you back then. All my life I've been walking the wall. I've been so afraid I was gonna fall, and I'm waiting for this sun to rise. I've been thinking that the shadow of my heart keeps calling, stepping out from this compromise. All my life, walking the wall. All my life, walking the wall. All my life, I've been walking the wall. I've been so afraid I was gonna fall, and I'm waiting for the sun to rise. I've been thinking that the shadow of my heart keeps calling, stepping out from this compromise. All my life, walking the wall. All my life, walking the wall. All my life, walking the wall.
Hello everyone, Come in, sit yourself down and make yourself at home. Welcome to Kev's Virtual Cafe on Kev's Cafe Corner. And this week I'm going to talk about yet another record shop, which I think I have touched on either in our TV show or on one of the podcasts for a different reason, but it's basically the same thing, but I'm going to go there anyway. My hometown of Derby was well known for its record stores, and we had one called R.E. Chords that was very cool, had very cool bags for you to take your records home in. It was in a basement in Saddlergate. It was just the coolest place to hang out, and the amount of bands and music I've discovered in the dusty shelves down in that dark, forbidding place are without number. It was just an amazing place to explore. And many years later, a guy came and took it over, kept it as a record shop, but renamed it BPM Records. And then some years later, he relocated to the old blacksmith's yard further down Saddlergate. And it's a shop that I frequent virtually every time I go back to Derby when I'm seeing family. And it's a rare occasion that I come out of there without some recorded format under my arm. I was in there one day browsing, and there was a track playing in the background. It was kind of nice, and I didn't pay a great deal of attention to it until the solo came in. And I just stopped what I was looking at and said, "What's that you've got playing on the system?" And it turned out it was a band called the Little Willies, which is kind of a side project for Norah Jones. And I was surprised because it didn't sound like a Norah Jones kind of vibe. But it was the guitar solo that grabbed me. And I've spoken about this guy before in some of our other broadcasts, a guitarist called Jim Capilongo that I'd never heard of. An amazing Telecaster player with a very distinct style and interesting explorer of the guitar, really, what he can get out of it, what he can make it do that's out of the ordinary. And his solos just go to places you can't imagine. And a little like XTC do that. It challenges you, and it's just a beautiful thing. So needless to say, on that particular occasion, I walked out of the door with the Little Willies album. And as I've said before, record shops do that for you, you know. They inform, they educate and delight. And it's a rare moment that I go in there and not find something to lift my spirits musically or to send me off in a search for something else because I've seen a credit on an album sleeve where I've gone, yeah, that guy, he produced that or he guested on that album. And I love that journey, that musical journey, the interconnectedness. And BPM Records is a great little shop. They have a good selection of second-hand albums, so you find some real gems in there. And yeah, I'm just so proud that Derby have still got a decent record shop going on. In the next episode, I'll probably leave the British Isles and talk about a shop elsewhere. But I'll leave the location until next week. See you then.
Science, engineering, culinary adventures, and stick-with-itness. The Bishop's Daily Bread this week welcomed the completion of a task I'd been trying on and off for several weeks now, maybe even months, to create a perfectly square, brackets cuboid, loaf of bread. If you want to hear a bit more about the origins of this story, head back to episode 35, where I describe the delightful gold-coloured loaf tin that I bought a few months ago, and the joy that it sparks in me. But this week was the week. Through careful experimentation and some stubbornness, I achieved, if I say so myself, the perfectly shaped square, cuboid, loaf. Honestly, it's a shame this podcast is audio only, because the pictures I shared proudly on familial and social messaging groups accompanied by the caption, "I am beyond thrilled," would amaze you. You can see the corners, the sharp edges, and it is glorious. It's 5% more square than even the squarest loaf you've seen in a supermarket, promise you. If not 10% squarer. It was super square. So square, I really didn't want to actually, eat the thing. I wanted to preserve it, dunk it in formaldehyde and put it on my shelf forevermore. The perfect square, cuboid loaf. A symbol of the power of humanity to overcome obstacles. A symbol of my own personal triumph in adversity. A symbol of the careful and incremental process of experimentation which no doubt the world's scientists would have been proud of. In the end, I chopped it up and ate it, obviously. It's a loaf of bread. But there was a while there when it was more than that. So what's the message from this week's Daily Bread? Don't give up. Keep chipping away. You'll get there. But also, eat the bread. That's it for this week. Thank you for listening wherever in the world you are. Subscribe to the podcast or on Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud, Spotify. The next episode will be out next Friday. Don't forget to join us on YouTube for the Transatlantic Connection show and become part of the Transatlantic Connection movement. Head to youtube.com/The Vagabond Way. Find The Vagabond Way or Steve Bonham on the Long Road on Facebook. That's our main social media channel. All of our music's on Spotify, Apple Music. Go have a listen. Give us a follow. If you like what you hear, share it with your pals who might like it as well. We're on Patreon at patreon.com/The Vagabond Way. Big thank you to our Patreons and a special shout out to Orla Flynn, James Lydon, Stuart Lydon, Yvette Lydon and Trish Taylor. Thank you. Patreon is a great platform that makes it super easy for anyone out there, to support content that you love on a monthly basis. It gives you direct access to the people creating the stuff you love, us, hopefully, and you get to play an integral part in shaping the direction of the things that we make. So, become a Vagabonder. That's our name for our supporters on Patreon, to help us create music, live performances, books and short stories, this weekly podcast, our YouTube show, and some new things that we're cooking up. As a Vagabonder, you can get the recordings and books we make for free, receive exclusive Patreon-only merchandise in the post, get regular behind-the-scenes updates from us, unlock access to exclusive live stream performances and Q&As, and lots more. You can help us create something different, something that entertains, and something that inspires others. So, join us on the journey and release the vagabond within. Patreon.com/The Vagabond Way. Thank you once again, brave adventurers, vagabonds and explorers, for joining us on The Vagabond Way. Remember, the world isn't beige, it's authentic, it's rich and it's real. Embrace every last bit of it. Until next time, the journey goes ever on with The Long Road. Bye for now.